Good evening. My name is Jal Mehta. I'm an associate professor here at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. We're here for one-on-one with Jaylen Brown. Who I guess doesn't need much of an introduction given how packed the house is. So this Askwith Forum came to be because Kevin Baum, who works on our staff, saw Jaylen's interview in The Guardian when the Celtics were in London, reached out to Jaylen over Twitter. Jaylen liked his tweet, and the rest is history. So here we are. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. This forum is in conjunction with the Alumni of Color Conference. AOCC is a 3-day student-run conference which happens annually. It brings together educators, researchers, policymakers, change makers, and students to talk about race, class, education, and how to make positive social change. So that event and Jaylen's interest in talking here really came together, fused into one in a really good way. So before I introduce you to Jaylen, also should say a word about this. These are Askwith forums. These are regular events that are held here at the Ed School that are used to connect the work that happens in the educational space and the work that happens here at the Ed School with the larger public. If you want to tweet about tonight's event, you can use hashtag Askwith. And you can also use hashtag Jaylen Brown and other things which probably have larger followings out there in the world, but you could help build the Askwith brand. So Jaylen Brown, as I'm sure everybody here knows, attended Cal Berkeley. He was the he was the Pac-12 Freshman Player of the Year. He was taken by the Celtics in the 3rd pick of the 2016 NBA draft. This year, he is a starter on the Celtics, who are currently in 2nd place in the Eastern Conference, a half game behind the Raptors. But what brings him here today is that in addition to being a basketball player, he's also an intellectual. He's a student of history, philosophy, meditation. He's a longtime chess player. Naila Nasir, who is now the president of the Spencer Foundation, was a professor at Berkeley when Jaylen was there. And she says of him, he is quite simply a kind, gracious, incredibly thoughtful young man with a lot to say about the state of our world. And in so doing, Jaylen joins a long tradition of athletes, from Muhammad Ali to Colin Kaepernick, who see their role as not only to play, but to lead, especially in the increasingly unstable and inequitable world in which we find ourselves. I also should say that in our prep call about a week ago, Jaylen said that he was very excited to take part in this forum. So while many people here might see an exciting night as going to a Celtics game, Jaylen sees an exciting night as coming here to talk to us. Let me just give you a quick sense of how it's going to go. Jaylen's going to talk for about 20 to 25 minutes. Then I'm going to conduct an interview for another 20 minutes or so, and then we will open it up. Folks can queue at those 2 microphones and ask questions, and we'll run till about 7 o'clock. So with that, join me in welcoming Jaylen Brown, who's going to talk about Inequality by Design.
I don't want to stand behind the podium because I just want to be a little bit more active and walk around. Bear with me, I'm going to hold an iPad. Somebody told me it was a little bit more cutting edge than having a piece of paper. So it's 2018, y'all get with it. Most people want to hear about my experience as an NBA player / athlete, and we'll get to that, I promise. But I first wanted to start off with my experience throughout education, starting from Atlantic Public School all the way up to taking graduate level classes at the University of California, Berkeley. There's an overlap, and I'll explain. I get this question a lot. Jaylen, do you identify as an intellect, or do you identify as an athlete? And to be honest, I never give anyone a straight answer because, to be honest, I hate the dichotomy of it. I hate the fact that it has to be one or the other. I hate the fact that there's no possibility for both. And in my reality, there is. Give me a second. Before I get started, I want to thank everybody for having me here. It's truly an honor to be up here and speaking. It's truly a pleasure. When I first decided to come up here and I talked to my friends and I told them I was coming up here, they were like, oh my God, Jaylen, what are you going to talk about? And I was like, to be honest, I was more concerned with what I wasn't going to talk about, concising, speaking on something that connects with me and resonates with you guys. In that process, one of the things that jumped off the page was inequality by design structured in our education system. A form of inequality not as direct or as noticed as racism, but just as aggressive or even more aggressive. Social stratification is one of those terms. Academics like to call tracking. Jeannie Oakes is the person who developed tracking. I'll give you a short definition of what tracking is for those who don't know. Tracking is the process where students are divided into categories so that it can be assigned into groups to various kinds of classes. I'm gonna bring this definition back up a little bit later in a different light, so just bear with me. An example Jeannie Oakes gives is hidden curriculum, placing a student in a certain class based on social class, which means basically, AP honor student, and then you have regular standard classes. AP honor student are taught, their curriculum is taught to adapt, to apply what they learn in class to the world. People that are in regular classes are just taught to regurgitate information and just mimic pretty much what the teacher taught them. When I arrived at Berkeley and they put me in a summer bridge program, they put everybody in a summer bridge program to get acclimated to the university, we did a placement test. And in the placement test, it leads you based off your interests to what classes that you'll be in. So my placement test led me to an education class. Ironic, probably not. And these were one of the first things that I learned. This was my experience. I remember flipping through my reader as I'm reading my first assignment in the education class, and it's Jeannie Oakes tracking. And they're talking about hidden curriculum, social stratification. And I'm like, man, I know this, but I just didn't know the term for it. I experienced this, but I had no idea that it was going on. And I remember just tears. I was so emotional about it. I feel like somebody pulled a fast one on me. I feel like for the first time in my life, I wasn't in control. This thing had been going on my entire life throughout education that I had no idea it existed. This was my experience. This is my reality, my passion, my expertise. I like to share a statement that I learned in a global poverty class, and that it relates to education. It is, give me 1 second with the iPad. There are a lot of academics in here, so I'm sure a few can relate to this statement. Academics can only get you so far. You can study it all your life, control the practice of it, house all the information, but until you get uncomfortable and experience it for yourself, can you call yourself a true expert or a true academic? If you have, great. I know there's teachers and educators here, so if you have, great. If you haven't, I challenge you to do so. This was my experience. I've seen tracking, I've seen the negative side effects from it. I've seen the things attached to it, low self-esteem, rebellious behavior, fixed mindsets, all of it. Tracking since kindergarten, standardized test puts you in a certain place, in a certain track, and you stay on that track all the way up until high school. And little do you know, if you don't do anything to determine that, you'll be in that same social mobility for the rest of your life. I've seen it. One of the things I've seen the most, and if I had to pinpoint one phrase that an educator developed that I read that describes my educational experience throughout high school, middle school, and elementary, will be the banking concept. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the banking concept, but it is a concept developed by Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator. In the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he talks about the banking concept and how it relates to society. He describes it as the teacher talks and the student listens. The teacher chooses the program, the content, and the students adapt to it. It does not allow them to develop the critical consciousness and think in their own perspective. They just regurgitate info and spit it back. Paulo Freire said himself, verbatim, that the banking concept mirrors oppressive society as a whole. He also says application is the key. Reading the world, problem posing method. Application is the most essential ingredient throughout our education system. Yes, education is the key to success, but application is the ignition, and we must merge the two for the vehicle to be able to move forward. And at this point and at this time, 2018, it's time to match the gas. Because the idea of America is that some people have to win and some people have to lose. And there's certain things in place, like I just discussed, hidden curriculum, social stratification, and et cetera, that exist to make sure certain people end up here and certain people end up there. There are going to be some people that are going to be the political elites, legislators, and government officials, and there'll be some people that are going to fill our prison industrial complex and work vocalization jobs. And that's just the reality of it. Jaylen, you're an NBA player. You're fine. You're a millionaire. Yes, this is true. But if I didn't have the counter space of basketball, where would I be? Just because I escaped the barriers of society, why should I forget about the people who didn't or haven't or won't? If I didn't have the counter space of basketball, what would my reality be? Where would I channel my energy? Would I do something positive with it? Would I resort to violence? These are real life scenarios that kids in America wake up with every single day. Counter spaces. I'm gonna read the definition for those who don't know. Counter spaces. Where is it? Counter spaces. Give me one second. A place outside the classroom for students to vent frustrations and cultivate friendship with people who share many of their same experience. Daniel Solorzano. This is so important, and this is the role institutionalized sports plays in our society. Without these counter spaces, especially in lower poverty areas, what would be the reality, right? But don't get me wrong, sports is generally seen in a positive way. So I'm here talking about sports. I'm looking at two perspectives of it. As an NBA player who's benefited from it, but I also speak on people who haven't. And I don't speak for everybody. This is just some of the things and some of my ideas. You can call me crazy if you want. But counter spaces is this thing. It's a place where people can find outlet and release stress. My counter space was basketball. And this is the role institutionalized sports plays in society. Don't get me wrong, positive. Sports can be seen in a positive way. It's a unique way to bring everybody together. My mom, who's sitting right here, will probably tell you the reason why she put me in sports, or put me and my brother in sports, is one, to occupy our mind, develop character, develop leadership skills, discipline, and all of the above. And to be honest, it worked. In reality, it worked. But sports have been creative, liberative, expressive, all in the same stint for me. In many ways, sports, people in our neighborhoods, sports saved our life, to be honest. But on the other hand, however, sports can also be seen as a mechanism of control. A lot of people in our society, spectators and people who play, will be a lot less accepting of their role in society if sports didn't exist. And I can attest to that. Bordeaux backs this up. Like just how there's tracking, I read the definition for tracking in the lens of education. Now I'm gonna read it again. I want you to look at it in the lens of sports. Tracking. The process where students are divided into categories so they can be assigned into groups of various kinds of classes. Research has shown there's tracking in sports as well. Bordeaux backs this up by saying sports is class-based. In America, we like to think sports transcends social class. But in reality, research has shown that the sports we choose to play are attached to social class. For example, the upper class, usually have more social mobility, more finances, more resources, et cetera. The sports they tend to play are golf, polo, skiing, et cetera. Most of the time involve a private club, a private membership, et cetera. I'm sure some people can relate. And most of the time they play sports as a means to socially network or gain social economic capital through the sports they play, not as a means to make it out or be successful. It's just a pastime. For the middle to lower class, it's a lot different. Sports is, for middle to lower class sports, usually require less income or need less income, less financial monetary gain. Team sports can accommodate more players, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, weightlifting, usually are more violent. And most of the time, these sports are more violent because they need a way to develop a form of masculinity. I'm not going to get into hegemonic masculinity too much, but I definitely think it's a problem. And what it is, people from my neighborhood or people from inner city youth, they feel a need to develop a sense of masculinity because that is what they need to survive. People who aren't masculine are picked on. People who aren't masculine are exposed. So I won't get too much on that, but on sports and social class, the reason why minorities dominate these middle to lower class sports is because we have less opportunities and less resources to have so. The reason why I'm in NBA is not because I'm genetically more advanced, it's because I can jump higher or run faster than the average human. It's because I had less opportunity and I worked really hard at my craft. But even in sport, you can see the hidden inequality, just like you could see it in education. When the media describes, there's only two sports that, I won't even get into that. When the media describes LeBron James, what do they describe him as? He's a beast, he's a monster, he's not human, not real, man-child, body of a man, brain of a child. When the media describes JJ Redick, how do they describe him? They say he's so technical, so smart, so he's a student of the game. What is the undertone of them saying this? Is this embedded in our conscience? Why is this? Is it saying that, minorities or African Americans are genetically more enhanced and able to participate in sports? That's why minorities dominate the NBA, NFL? Is that undertone by them being able to say, Caucasian players are more intelligent? Is there an undertone of that? In reality, none of that is true. African Americans, minorities, we're not more genetically enhanced than anybody sitting in the stands. We worked hard to get to where we're at. When we say we're unreal, we're a beast, we're inhuman, I think that undercuts the work ethic, the time we spend on our craft and things like that to get to where we're at. We had a lack of opportunity, a lack of resources to be in the situation we're in now. And the reason why, the percentages look the way they do is because of that, because of the way society is shaped, not because biologically people are indifferent. In reality, we're all the same. Our societal structures, the percentages you see throughout sports and et cetera, and embeds, almost brainwashes us to think these certain ideals. But in reality, there's no difference between JJ Redick and LeBron James, except LeBron James is LeBron, of course. But both of them had to work just as hard, had to study their craft just to put them where they are. There's no biological difference between the two. You could pretty much say I was track. I've been studying, I've been practicing, working on my game, trying to get to the NBA since I was 13 years old. That's 8 years. 7 years, I was drafted last year. 7 years of just studying, working at my craft. I had natural ability, but until I got the access, the experience, the teaching, the avenues of the upper class, and I got financial help and was able to experience it, it'll be hard for me to be here today as a Boston Celtic. Me being here as a Boston Celtic is a testament to the loops and bounds it took for me just to get here. Me being here on this stage at Harvard is a testament to the loops and bounds it took just to get here. There's certain things in our society that negates the experience of youth sport throughout education. There's certain things in our society that negates the experience of youth sport or youth education in our educational system. Thousands of people apply for D1 university and try to make professional leagues in sport. Thousands of people, apply for universities and try to get jobs. Only a select few make the cut. This is the idea of America, the survival of the fittest. Sports and education are my two greatest passions. Easily have the most influence, and if handled correctly, can affect the most change. This brings up recent topics. Shut up and dribble. I'm sure a lot of people have heard the recent topics between Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and what has been said. If you haven't, a reporter referring to LeBron and Kevin Durant told them two of the best players in our game they were told to shut up and dribble. And I've made comments in the media about this for some time now, but I thought I would address it while I'm here. This has been the notion in our society for the last 10, 15 or so years. The last few generations is that athletes are not allowed to have an opinion, are not allowed to have a voice. Even me coming up here today, had concerns, that there would be some form of pushback, or that the media here would take something I said and it'll be misconstrued or whatever the case may be. But to be honest, I'm not afraid. This has been the notion for too long, and it's time to change. You see it evolving right in front of us right now. You got athletes who are politicians, venture capitalists, fashion designers, musicians, the list goes on. Athletes are evolving right in front of us as we speak. And the influence of an athlete is just as much as the influence or even greater than the influence as some of your most favorite political elites and government officials. If you don't believe me, ask your son, ask your daughter, ask your kids, who would they rather hang out with, Tom Brady, Kairi Irving, or the mayor of Boston, or the mayor? It won't even be close. A perfect example of athletes being able to use their voice and advocate, in my opinion, is Colin Kaepernick. Whether you liked, disliked, agreed with what he said, or disagreed with what he said, he made people uncomfortable. And that was the most significant ingredient to me, the uncomfortable. Because for the last 250, 260 plus years, there's been a certain group of people who have been a lot more comfortable than others. So it's time to get uncomfortable. It's time to experience. It's time to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And in closing, I want to say this quote again. I said it before. Education can only get you so far. You can study it all your life, control the practice of it, house all the information. But until you get uncomfortable and experience, can you say you're a true expert or academic? If you have, great. I applaud you. If you haven't, I challenge you to do so. I'm Jaylen. Thank you guys for having me.
All right. Do you have a preference which side we sit on?
Actually,
Darren, we're going to have to sit there because the way your mic's on.
All right. All right, great. So let's just pick up where you left off. we have a school system which is heavily tracked, segregated, unequal. What are the root things that lie behind that, and what are some things that we might be able to do about it?
I just think it's the way, I'm not sure what the root things are behind it, like what's the reasoning of it. I just think it's the way society has been for a long amount of time, even since the Land-Grant Act in 19, whatever it was, like when the neoliberalism movement and everything came over. I just think that's the way society has been for the last 50 or so years.
And so I imagine that there are folks out there who agree with your analysis and want to know, like, what it is they could do, you could do, we could do. Like, what's one or two kind of concrete things that some folks out there might be able to do to start to address some of the things that you're talking about?
Well, I'll say this. In Boston, at least in certain neighborhoods, like I live in Newton and Wellesley, is that how you pronounce it? And Wellesley, they have put this in place. Like I've seen, like Brad Stevens' son goes to a school where like he doesn't get letter grades. So I've seen the change occurring. Mm-hmm. I just would like to speed up that curve, but it's a process to everything.
And you said that, how do you think the sort of place of what athletes can speak about, like, do you think that that's changing? I remember that quote from Michael Jordan, Republicans buy sneakers too. And it feels like we're in a different moment, both in terms of athletes and also politically in the country. Sort of what do you see as the role of the athlete who wants to speak to larger issues right now?
I think when Michael Jordan said that, it was a different narrative. I think the society was in a different place. I think 2018, you see things changing, you see slowly things occurring, people are more woke than they've ever been. So as that's occurring, now it's more accepted, I think. So athletes are changing, like I said before, athletes are changing like right in front of our eyes. We see athletes are doing other things outside of basketball, and it's almost being okay into some extent, but it's still like a pushback. It's not all the way, but you see the narrative changing.
And what sort of reactions do you get from your teammates, coaches, Celtics organization, friends, family when you're coming to do something like this?
For the most part, I get support from everyone around, but also get concern. That's one of the things that I get. People are concerned, like what some of the things I say or some of the things I talk about, people are concerned like there's going to be a pushback. It was a concern even coming up with here because, athletes, they talk about political and issues and the way society is formatted. People get blackballed, ridiculed, laughed at, pushed back. It's all of those things attached to it, So I get a lot of concern from people as well. They don't want to see me, in one of those cases in one of those examples, but for the most part, I get support.
And do you think that relates in part to the sort of the nature of media today, like the way in which people, we're in an academic space, we say things, they get recorded, they go on the internet, but you're living in a whole different world. Just tell us a little bit about like what it's like to be in that world.
Yeah, so it is a completely different world, and media plays a big part in our society as well. So the way the narrative is spoken, the way everything is said and talked about can have a direct effect on somebody and somebody's career or somebody's actions. So that's one of the things I'm cognizant of, but at the same time I feel the way I feel, so I still speak my mind regardless of inhibitions. But you do want to protect yourself at all costs. So that's one thing. When I came up here, I wanted to protect myself, even with media. Like some of the things I wanted to say, I didn't, just because it's still like I wouldn't say a fear, but I would say, a concern in that area.
What were those things? Just kidding. You talked a little bit about Colin Kaepernick. I was really interested as I was waiting for the basketball season to start to see what NBA players were going to do around kneeling for the anthem. Were there discussions about that? And what's been your thought process about that?
Yes, there's been discussions, and it's been a little bit interesting, and I won't say everything, but I would say that, most people, in the organizations in the NBA, they try to get out in front of it. They tried to, proactive groups or have people come in and talk to you before, we did anything like that. So it was kind of handled. That's what I would say.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And what was it like moving from first from high school to Berkeley? Can you tell us a little bit about that transition in terms of what the environment was like in those places, and then moving from there to the NBA?
To be honest, it was a complete culture shock. Going from Atlanta, a fast-paced city, to the Bay Area, which is more laid back and cool. The Californians is what I call them. They laid back, cool, a lot different from Boston, But the experience was fantastic. I think my best experience was just taking classes there, like the classes I got to take and the people I got to meet. I built lifelong relationships that I can tap into at any time. So I think that was the best part of going there. And I mean, the basketball part was whatever it was, the chips fall where they may, but the educational experience I had at Cal, second to none.
Nice. And so how about the NCAA? The NCAA has been in the news a lot recently. Jalen Rose, who hosts my favorite podcast, says that he's been saying for 25 years that players should be paid and that everybody's making money except for the players, and it all revolves around, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is basically on the backs of the people who are not getting paid. And Jalen Rose's view is that, he's been saying this for 25 years, and at the beginning people said, you should be happy with the scholarship, and now more and more people are coming to sort of take that view. What do you think about that?
I agree with Jalen, 100%. There's definitely corruption in NCAA and in our youth sport. That's one of the things I was figuring, should I talk about it or should I not? And I decided not to. But it's definitely some corruption and some things that need to be figured out. I definitely agree with Jalen Rose. It's some speculation about the nonprofit, and there's a lot of exchange going on, and the players aren't in that exchange. And I feel like they should be, because they're the ones bringing in, they're the ones being commodified. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Well, I can see people sitting on the edge of their chairs. So I think I'm ready to take some questions. So we got two microphones. We got one on this side and one on that side. I'd only say, this is a serious academic event, so not the place to tell us about, your time with Larry Bird or Bill Russell or how far back your Celtics fandom goes. Looking forward to your questions. One thing we always say here is make sure that your questions end with a question mark. So let's start over here.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Melissa. I'm a student at the School of Government, a few-minute walk from here. You've spoken about the fact that modern racism operates in subtle ways, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how we can explain that to people who are not minorities, a non-minority audience, to understand that, and how you can leverage your platform as an athlete to push that conversation forward.
That's a really good question, and I've been thinking about that for the longest, because I've tried to explain to my friends, the people around me, and it's like they just look at me with a blank face. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? They don't really necessarily understand it, and that's tough. I just think, people of influence and people who have the advocacy to do so can continue to do it. It's a tough topic to try to explain to someone who, doesn't want to hear it, especially coming from someone who's experienced higher education. They think you're trying to impose intelligence on them or something like that. I've dealt with that. Instead, you're just trying to share with something that you learn. I'm not sure. I don't have the answer for that, but we're looking for it together. I'm trying to find it too.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is Maddie. My question is with regards to the concept of academic clustering in NCAA sports. So this is commonly in basketball and football, where 30 to 40% of the student athletes are taking the same major. So my question is, what's your opinion on this? And do you think that some of the cause is from underlying biases from athletic administrators, that student athletes from these sports can't grow as much intellectually or handle the rigor of perceived more difficult majors?
This is an interesting and a subjective topic because everybody has a different experience. I can speak on mine. When I got to Cal, they put me in, they tried to put me in safe classes. They thought things that I would succeed at, and that's one of the things that, my academic team bumped heads with because, they're responsible for me being on the floor and being able to play sports and being able to be active. But, I came to Cal for an education. I didn't come for basketball purposes, but that's where the balance comes with. And I think that everybody's situation is different, but that's definitely problematic. You see athletes are taking majors that don't really apply to anything or don't really add up anything. And for their 4 years of service, after, leading the university to multiple wins, they have nothing to show for it once they graduate. And that's super important. So I think it goes hand in hand with, starting early in our education system. Even starts with going back to the whole tracking thing and athletes and how our minds work necessarily in society, how we feel like basketball. I look at the TV screen, and when I see people of color, when I see people who are successful on a TV screen that look like me, 99% of them are athletes or entertainers. So when it comes to education, they're like, psst, like, I want to be like Kyrie Irving. I want to be like, an NFL player. I want to be like Cam Newton. They don't really think like, okay, I need to go to college and get a degree and work and almost conform into society. But, that's some of the things that starts not necessarily once you get to college, it starts even before, I feel like. And I feel like, just starting and having the advocacy as a young age and just challenging the idea of like America and tracking and making kids more aware of their social mobility, teaching them to adapt and apply what they learn to the real world, that will all have a systemic change in like the results that we see once they get to college.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is David Kong. I'm a synthetic biologist from the Media Lab at MIT. And at the Media Lab, we develop a lot of technologies around education, and we have sort of 4 principles. One's projects, which is learning by doing. Second is peers, learning from others and teaching others. Third is passion, and the fourth is play. And so I'm wondering, if you could talk a little bit about the potential role that technology can play in both educational settings and also trying to address some of these issues of inequality in society. And then the second part question is, would you be excited to come to MIT sometime? Because we would love to have you come and nerd out about technology and the future of science and engineering. So.
Oh, yeah, for sure. First, I'll start with technology. You see me with the iPad.
I know.
It's 2018. You got to be more cutting edge. The world is changing. You got to change with it. So, yeah, I would think technology helps a lot. There's so many different devices and so many different things that is so more accessible to you than there was even when I was growing up. And I'm only 21, so now I don't even know what is around now. They probably got stuff that'll just tell you the answer, But I definitely feel like that's important, and some of the things that you talked about, passion, and I agree with all those things. And I'd love to come to MIT.
Awesome. Make it happen. Thank you, Jaylen.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Angel. I'm a freshman at Harvard. And I wanted to ask, what did you think of KD's recent comments that NBA players' salaries shouldn't be publicized? I definitely agree with your comments about the disadvantages of lower income kids putting their education on the back burner to pursue a career in professional sports. But with the fact that you guys have guaranteed $1 million contracts, do you think that adds to the problem in the sense that I can, become an NBA player and make a minimum of $1 million a year, or I can become a doctor and make a minimum of, $200,000 a year? I mean, the numbers don't add up. So do you think that would be helpful, or would that hurt kind of the brand of the NBA?
I don't think it'll be hurtful. I think as being an NBA player, I don't think our salary should be publicized. Like, you go and you look at a doctor's salary, his salary isn't publicized. NBA athletes and athletes in general are the ones who their salaries are public knowledge, so all you guys can look and see how much money I make. That's uncomfortable, but when I think of what you just said and I think of my situation, I think of even putting education on the back burner. I don't think it adds to the problem that they're making millions of dollars. I think, the media is the one who portrays it as a negative lens. Like even when I was considered an athlete, when I was at Cal, I went one and done. And there was critiques like, if Jaylen is so into education, why is he leaving and going to school? Why is he leaving school early? Mm-hmm. That was a question I would get. Like, if you love school so much, why are you leaving? I'm like, if you was about to make $4.7 million, would you leave? Like,
Yeah,
it makes sense. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. Why would I turn it down? If a kid had a startup and he left and he dropped out of college and he had a startup that made revenue of $1 million, nobody would blink twice.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Jack Trumpor. I'm from the Labor and Work-Life program at Harvard Law School. The renowned journalist David Halberstam wrote that the Boston Celtics, Red Auerbach, he said, recruited the smartest players of the highest character and paid them horribly. The Celtics developed a lot of the labor union activity of the NBA players, threatening to strike the 1964 All-Star game, which resulted in NBA players getting a pension plan. And I wanted to ask you whether there's a lot of awareness of the Celtics' heritage of Bill Russell, Cousy, and Tom Heinsohn in organizing the workers in labor, and maybe if you could raise the issue of, in the United States, most workers are having their unions smashed, not able to engage in collective bargaining. Maybe the issue of labor in our country is one of the big reasons for the inequality that's developed, and I'd love to hear your reflections on that. Thank you.
For sure, I think you said it best. I think that is one of the forms of inequality that we still have to continue to discuss and talk about. As if I'm aware of the Celtics' legacy, tradition, and history, I am completely. Before I got drafted, I was talking to my family about where I wanted to go, where I wanted to be placed. I can remember just telling them that I hope to go to the place that needs me the most. And I think it was fitting that I got drafted to, one of the most prestigious teams in first-class organizations there is, with the Boston Celtics. Like you talked about with the labor unions, the things they started, and then the history of the African-American history, first black all-head coach, first black starting five, all of this history that when I walked into, and it was just so exciting to hear and learning about
it. How's it going, Jaylen? Isaiah, I'm a freshman here. I'm on the football team also, so I've been an athlete all my life as well. Just wanted to touch on just what you thought about, at least from my experience, as an athlete, especially as a black man. I've always felt like expectations were somewhat low for me. I put together an articulate statement, and people are impressed just right then and there. So I've always kind of felt the responsibility and what turns into the burden of feeling like I have to represent all athletes and all African Americans within every encounter I have. If you've experienced that, can you touch on that and just how you've dealt with that over your life?
I definitely experienced that. When I open my mouth and talk, people are almost, sometimes they say they're amazed, like they're like of my intellect, or I don't know if that's because of like I truly speak in a way that people can understand and feel a certain ways, or because like they don't expect it. And I don't know. I don't know, but that's definitely something that I'm curious about, and that's something that a lot of people feel like you probably feel the same way. But I was having a conversation with a coach, or somebody on the coaching staff, and like a year back, and they were talking about, the perceptions that we get in minority communities about, the bad things about the music videos and et cetera, and then saying it would be a lot, they were telling me that it would be a lot better experience if we could handle that exchange better, in the sense that, like, if we were doing this, if we weren't doing the music videos or doing this, that, maybe society would treat us different or see us in a different light. And I disagree with that. And I disagree with that statement in general, in a sense. And I agree with you when you say, like, that you almost had to feel like there were low expectations. And it shouldn't be that way, because our former president before Trump got into office was African American, And that still is the sense of low expectations amongst people of color, not just African Americans. So it's crazy that our president, the president of the United States was African American, and that you're sitting here telling me that people have low expectations for you. And it's true, because people have low expectations in me. I just think it's absurd.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Sarah. I'm in the Education Policy and Management program here at the Ed School. And I really agree with what you're saying about tracking and kind of telling kids from an early age where they're going to go without them even realizing it. And I'm interested to know what you have to say about how discipline practices come into play, because I think there might be, you would go into a school in Wellesley and you'd see the kids being free to do kind of whatever they want, and then you might go into a school I taught at a school in Jamaica Plain where it just wasn't the case. And sometimes discipline practices kind of inhibit individuality and kind of developing that sense of self. So what would you say to me or any other teacher in those schools about how to kind of bring that out in kids kind of in these rigid systems of discipline?
That's tough. I'm not a teacher, but I can give the best explanation I can. I think that there definitely is a difference. I think it starts with, I'm sure in Wellesley, there's a different level of resources than there was in Jamaica Plains, right? And I think that there probably was a higher student population in Jamaica Plains than there was in Wellesley. Or no, was it the same amount of students?
Demographically, they're very different.
Yeah, I'm saying, was it like in my classroom growing up in public school, it was 30 kids.
Right, no, I
in
hear
one
what you're saying.
class.
I think it's probably slightly larger classes in Jamaica Plain.
Slightly larger. So that for a teacher, that's difficult. You have to handle that accordingly,
Right.
rather than, Wellesley is a different aspect, and you have more resources to allow them to be creative. And as a teacher, in America, especially at a public school, you don't make the curriculum. That's the tough part. Most of the time the curriculum comes from, educational policies within the state.
Okay.
So, you got to teach the kids accordingly to the curriculum. And that's what's tough, because I had teachers that would feel confined to the curriculum and wanted to do stuff to help us be free and express ourselves and liberate ourselves. But in the classes that I experienced, this is what we were taught to teach. And we had to regurgitate this information, and we had to report it back. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Stephen. I'm a junior at Emmanuel College. There's been a well-reported strife between the players and the referees this season, even to the extent where in the All-Star break a couple weeks ago, some players met with some referees in the referee union. And I just wanted to see what your opinion is on that, and if that's strictly a basketball issue, or do you think there's maybe some external factors that are going on with that?
And from my opinion, I think it's a basketball issue. I don't know if it's external or not. I try not to pay attention to the refs, I'm only in my second year. I know I'm not getting no calls. So, that's above my pay grade for that.
Thanks.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is Fabienne Noronha. I am an alumna from the Learning and Teaching program here at HGSE, and I am currently a kindergarten teacher in Cambridge Public Schools. And one of the things that made me really come here today was not because you're a basketball player, was much more because I read about all of your interests. So you speak Spanish, you play chess, you play the piano, and it was like, okay, I didn't think of you as a successful person. I thought of you as a very happy person, a person who's able to exercise this variety of talents. And as a teacher, I think something that interests me is to hear about the educational experiences of people like you who have this possibility of doing so many different things in your life, So my point is, do you have any experience, anything that went right in your education, especially when you were in elementary school, a kindergartner, anything that stayed with you that helped you nurture all these interests? Because I am more interested in helping my students be happy rather than being successful.
That means a lot to hear you say that. Yeah, clap it up a lot. That means a lot to hear you say that, first off. But, there's certain things that I grew up inside of my household that were allow for us to be expressive. And my mom and my grandma are sitting right here. So the things they did, early on was ways to kind of cultivate me towards, being myself, that's it, just being the best version of me. Like they would just challenge me to do things in the house. Even when I wanted to just go outside and play basketball, they would make me come in and do book reports and things like that. And I hated it at the time, but it worked. And those were things that worked for me. But I wasn't really comfortable, being myself until I got to California, until I went to Berkeley. Like even when I was in high school, like I had the same interests that I did then, but nobody knew about them because I wasn't really comfortable telling people. It's a different stimulation telling, where I'm from. Like I'm from Atlanta. If I tell somebody like I like writing poetry, they'll laugh in my face. And that's just what it is. And I got to Berkeley, like when I told them people I like to write poetry, they were like, they thought I was cool. So it was everything was backwards. Everything that I thought I knew, once I got to Berkeley, was flipped upside down. Like everything I thought was cool, like the way I dress, like the shoes, earrings I wear. When I went to California, it was the complete opposite. Like it was in a whole nother world.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Tanya. I'm a senior here at Harvard. So you talk sort of about this idea of counter spaces and basketball for you as a counter space and how it is often a counter space, or sports in general, are often a counter space for a lot of racial minorities living in impoverished communities. But unfortunately, like as we know, like the percentage of those kids that end up going to like the NBA or the NFL is incredibly small. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on alternative counter spaces that can be offered to those kids that could lead to, potentially more sustainable careers.
Yeah, that's when I read the definition of counter spaces, that's exactly what you're saying is exactly what I meant. My counter space I found was basketball, but there's so many other counter spaces that exist that are helpful, different, what do you call them, high school programs, like I was in Habitat for Humanity, there's Men and Women of Distinction, there's art classes, there's poetry clubs, a counter space can be anything that you make it. Wherever you feel comfortable with a certain group of people you feel comfortable with to just express your ideas and thoughts and just be able to relax and just almost get away from the society. I think that is super important. Like my counter space might be different from yours. Everybody has one. Everybody knows things that they love to do, that they're involved in outside of work, outside of basketball, outside of teaching. Everybody has things they love to do. So, whatever that is, I encourage and I push for that. And in education, I hope that we start developing that into the curriculum, just having a counter space so we can just feel almost comfortable in our education system.
Thank you.
Hey, Jal. So I'm a senior in high school right now. So I was wondering, what sort of advice would you give to a high school senior to get more involved in making a difference? And I know you're sponsored by Adidas, but I won't tell if you sign my J's.
To get more involved, there's plenty of things you can do to get more involved. I think just time, just donating some of your time throughout your day, I think that can be a start. Everybody's schedules is different, so I can't say like what might be good for you, because what might be good for you might not be good for you. Just develop a certain area and just thinking about it, just be active and engaged, thinking about it, talking to people, being aware, putting yourself in a space so you can experience or see things in other people's perspectives. I think that's one of the most ways you can challenge yourself and really make a difference is make yourself uncomfortable, put yourself in somebody else's shoes who, has different foresight. I think that'll help. And no, I'm not signing your J's, Team it is.
So I want to be respectful of Jaylen's time. So let's call the end of each line the sort of the end of the line. So that's as far as we're going to go for today. Go ahead.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Justin from Meta. I'm a sophomore at Tufts University. So America's based on this principle of meritocracy, and I guess my question is that truly fair? Because the reality is, like, people like me, born in the projects, raised in the projects, single mother household, etc., are forced to work twice as hard and like how can you create a society in which allows intergenerational mobility? How do you believe you can create an environment is solely based off meritocracy and not on who comes before you? Like, not your mom, like, not how much money your mom makes, not how much resources your mom or dad makes, etc.
Man, that's why I'm here, bro. Like, that's why I'm here at Harvard, being an athlete, being an advocate, trying to push for that same change that you're looking for. I'm looking for it too. You know, I don't think it's like a one concrete idea. I don't think it's one dimensional. I think it's multifaceted. I think it starts at the root as like when we start the standardized testing for kids. You see it changing slowly. I just hope that the change is here when I'm still alive. I would like to see it, but man, that's why I'm here. I agree with everything you're saying. I know the tough, the opinions based on you. I know how you feel. I experienced the same thing you experienced, single parent household, all of the same things. So, you know, being able to get to this stage, it's a lot of loops and bounds you got to get to. Just being able to be, you know, you is probably a lot of loops and bounds you had to get through as well. So I identify with that, but that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. First of all, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being willing to put yourself out there like this. It's awesome, so thank you. My question is, what are your thoughts about the rise of veganism among athletes? And has Kairi encouraged all you guys to give it a try?
I'm not going to snitch on Kairi, but I think it's important, you know. The only thing that's stopping me from being a vegan is ice cream. That's one. Like, I love sweets, and that's the hardest thing to give up. I know I've tried the vegan ice creams, and it doesn't taste the same. That's the only thing. But it adds. When you see people start doing it and it's working, I think it adds an edge, and I think that's the next edge. Everybody's always looking for an edge in athletics, and I think that's the next wave of things. I think my goal is to be there by like 25.
Nice.
But, you know, who knows, man.
I became a vegan at 25, so
all right.
You got time. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen. My name's Sahil, and we just want to thank you for your thoughts today. I think you've got a lot of us wondering over here why we weren't as woke when we were 21 either. But my question is, you know, when I read your recent interview with The Guardian when it came out, you had mentioned that the commander-in-chief, he empowers racism and he's unfit to lead. And I agree with both of those statements. Now, with that in mind, if you were to have a one-on-one with Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, what's one piece of advice that you would give him to hopefully try to make him more fit to lead?
I couldn't even answer that question right now, to be honest. I couldn't even answer that question. It'll be an interesting conversation, I'll say that. That's all I can really say.
Anything? One piece?
One piece? I would ask him. I'll probably ask him about some of the comments he's made and ask him what's going through there. Is he trolling, or does he really feel the way he feels? Because some of the stuff he says is unbelievable. And so I'll just ask him, you know, just because it could be sometimes you could perceive things differently, and Trump might be cool. You never know.
Hey, we all hope so. Thanks and good luck on Saturday against Houston.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen. My name's Charlie. I'm a junior at Tufts also. I'm a high jumper on the track and field team. And I really resonated with what you said about having varied interests and having counter spaces and just being a balanced person. And I think it's really important that I think young boys and girls, athletes in this country, do that, because it doesn't make you a weird or eclectic or nerdy person to have these balanced interests as an athlete. It actually gives you an edge and makes you a better person and a better athlete. And you've already answered a question about how we can fix that problem in the classroom, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how coaches on the court and out on the field can try to inspire their athletes to be more balanced people as well.
We was just talking about that. I was talking to Jal about that in the back. You know, one of my professors wrote an article. Well, she wasn't my professor, but I read her article in one of my classes, and then I went to go talk to her about it. Nyla not here. I don't think she's here, but she might be watching. But she wrote an article about racialized identities within sports. You know, a lot of people have identities they give to themselves, right? And then the coach gives them a different identity on the basketball floor or on the football floor, and then that's when the butting of heads that's where it hits. You know, like if I say that I want to be a point guard, and then the coach tells me, you know what, I want you to just play defense. That's it. And then that's when the butting of heads comes, and that's when, you know, choosing to play for a coach, or if you can, choosing to play for a coach that, you know, y'all have the same type of reality, you have the same expectations, you know, and that's tough because sometimes you don't get to choose your coach. I didn't get to choose Brad Stevens. I luckily got Brad Stevens, a great coach, you know, but everybody doesn't have that. And then when you have that temperament and that battle, that's when you hear about kids who are uncoachable or have bad attitudes or whatever the case may be, because, you know, their identity they give themselves was different from the identity the coach tried to give them.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name's Owen. I recently wrote a paper in college about like sports and race and the connection between the two, and I realized, coming from my background, really wasn't until I got to college that I realized like the link between race, sports, and politics and how they're almost synonymous. I was wondering, as a player, if there was a specific moment in your playing career, and at what moment in your playing career you realized that link, and if it was like a specific moment or more of like a gradual process.
It was definitely a gradual process, but like when I got to school, I took a class called Theoretical Studies, Sports and Education. So that was my link right there. That was the connecting point for me. That's when they brought everything together and related it, and that's where all my experiences, everything that I've seen or everything that I've done was now I looked at it in a different light because, you know, I had dissected my entire being.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, Jaylen. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
You touched on this point a little before, but about being an athlete and being told to shut up and dribble. And I wanted to ask you, in your point of view, what do you think athletes can do to convince still a large part of our country who thinks that athletes' job is to shut up and dribble, that you guys have a legitimate voice in advocating for these issues?
I think not be afraid. I think that's the first thing. I think athletes are, even my teammates or people I know they're not comfortable with being themselves, almost in a sense. Like there's people on my team that have other avenues and things they love to do, but they don't want the world to know because they don't want to get the pushback from it. You know, and that's where I challenge that. I discourage that because, like I said before, like you said, athletes have all the influence in the world. Everybody wants to hear what we have to say. Like, people care more about LeBron James than they care about, you know, some religious leaders or et cetera. So athletes can even be in the sacrament for that. So just not be afraid is one of the things I would say, and continue to push forward. And it's up to the media. It's up to us as a society and the people, fans watching, to continue to change that. Because until we push back on it, then, you know, it's going to continue to be perpetuated.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. Thank you, first of all, for being here, but also just for being such a role model to so many people, but especially young African-American men. My cousins love you, and I think that's pretty cool. So my name is Kindred, like Kindred Spirit, and I am a junior at Wellesley College. And I was just curious, so I did research on diversity in children's literature, so my question's gonna kind of be in that realm. But do you have a favorite children's book? And did you have a favorite children's book when you were a child? And then if so, how do you think that impacted you?
A favorite children's book? Man, I don't know. Favorite children's book, like how, from what age range?
I mean, it can be like Little Engine That Could, but it can also be like, I don't know, Harry Potter, like whatever you think.
Harry Potter was tough. Here you go.
Mom, you want to weigh in on this one?
I read a lot of books, like a lot. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at them like they look at I can't really think of that right now. I read a lot of books. Harry Potter, Series of Unfortunate Events was one of my favorites. Hunger Games was dope. I remember reading that when I was younger. Eragon was one of my favorites. Like, I'm trying to think of a book that really, The Watsons Go to Birmingham.
Hey, my brother's reading that right now, so he's watching, so shout out Joshua.
The Watsons Go to Birmingham might be a really good one.
That's awesome.
To check out. I think that really was cool to read.
Cool, thank you.
All right, so kids who are watching out there over the internet, you now have a list of things you can read this summer. Go ahead.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is Jill Metzger. I'm a current student here at the Graduate School of Education in the school counseling program. So not only do I want to work with youth in schools, but I want to work with them in some capacity in sports. So what advice do you have for adults working in those spaces to best empower youth, particularly in marginalized groups, to help them see a version of themselves that pushes back on common narratives or stereotypes about those groups?
I love to hear that, because I think that is what the new age should be. I think it should be a connection between, sports and education. They almost identify it as completely separate, and that's a part of like what I wanted my speech to capacitate, is that sports and education are similar and more overlapped than people think. So like, what I would say is continue to do what you're doing. To be honest, I think affecting kids not only through the education system and through sports and showing them the connectivity between the two, I think you'll just create a better student, a better person. I think that the outcome and the results will be better for our society. In my opinion, I think if they would have done that for me, and seen me the connection, where I'd probably been at Harvard or something, maybe.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is Trevor Russo. I'm a student at Tufts University, and one of the things that I found really interesting is that you're currently studying Arabic and trying to learn that. I'm studying Arabic too, and my family's from the Middle East, and I was wondering, what really drew you to study Arabic? It's a really hard language, but it's also very beautiful, and what really drew you to it, and what do you hope to do with it in the future?
Curiosity. A lot of my friends and a lot of people I resonate with, speaking in it, and I want to learn multiple languages. My goal is about 25, and Arabic was one of the first ones because they said it was harder, so that's why I wanted to start with that one. But that's pretty much it, just curiosity, and just also develop a side of the brain that, you don't activate as much. As an athlete, we have more time than people think, to be honest. So like in my off time, just doing something that's not physically tolling, but also develops the mind as well. So I try to keep my schedule filled with different activities and interests, the things that I like to do or love to do, but also make me just a better person, student, son, but also just continue my growth process.
Thank you.
Shukran.
Have fun.
Hey, Jaylen, my name's Dan. Thanks again for coming. First, I hope we can get you to the law school too. That'd be great. And my question is, so Michelle Roberts, the head of the NBA Players Association, was at the law school Monday and said that she really appreciated players speaking out about social issues, thought it was important, and she would always support them, but that she doesn't fault athletes who don't. Do you think players should use their platform to speak out, or is it an unfair burden for them to do that?
I think it's both. I think it goes both ways. I don't fault players who don't either. Some people, that's perfectly fine. I don't think anything's wrong with that. But I feel like a part of some of the reason why some people don't want to speak out is because of fear associated with it. The pushback that you get from society, the ridicule, the things that come with it, the people getting blackballed you hear about. Like, they don't want that. They don't want that to be them. So I don't fault them for that. And I don't want that to be me either. But at the same time, it's certain avenues where you can come up and speak and it can be appropriate. And I think, being here today, hopefully that's an appropriate place.
Thank you.
Hey, Jaylen, thanks for coming. My name's Jack. I'm a freshman here. You've touched on money both directly and indirectly throughout the speech, and it's been estimated that about 2/3 of Americans couldn't pass a basic financial literacy test. It's also been found by ESPN that 60% of NBA players go broke within 5 years of retirement. I just wanted to gain your thoughts on whether this should be addressed in the education system and whether the NBA is doing anything to help solve this problem.
I wouldn't say it's the education system. I would say it's the whole situation. I would say it has to do with, the structure of the NBA and how our agency, and agents who represent us, how that exchange happens. I don't know how I could describe it without getting into a lot of detail behind the whole how everything works within. But I would say we give our agency which a synonym for agency is power. You know, we give them our power to speak for us and represent us. And a lot of times the people we give our agency and our power to represent us isn't always fit to do so. You know, so like that's why I didn't sign with an agent when I came out of the draft, because I've read the same thing you read. Like, why is this? And athletes is said that, you know, we don't have enough time. We should just focus on basketball, almost like shut up and dribble. We should just focus on basketball and not on anything else, you know, and that's where that exchange that you just described happens. When you give, so first off, when you give somebody your power, you shouldn't do that in the first place, especially without understanding like what comes with giving somebody your power. And I think it's changing a lot, but I feel like athletes being more hands-on with themselves and their business and their career. I don't fault athletes, and I say it goes 50-50, it's both ways, you know, like fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, you know, so it goes both ways. Like, are they wrong for taking advantage of athletes who don't understand like how business works and financial literacy and signing documents, power of attorney, et cetera? Yes, but do I blame the athletes for not understanding? Like, there's plenty of examples that's happened before, and where to check and where to get help and ask for resources. Yeah, because the resources are there. The NBA PA does a great job, you know, with providing the resources. Just nobody takes the time out to just actually pick up the phone and ask questions. But it's changing a lot. Like, so I wouldn't blame the education system. I would just blame, you know, the way society is kind of structured, the way it is.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaylen. I'm Matt, and I study political science at Holy Cross. And one thing that I'm really fascinated in is how social factors, whether it's the Black Panther movie or NBA players, kind of affect the national political conversation. And it made me think of like LeBron James and how much obviously he's done in his home community of sending so many kids to college and kind of giving them that opportunity. But when you hear LeBron James in politics, it's usually in reference to his response to whatever hot take or political issue is dominating headlines that day. What do you think it is about education that makes it so difficult to kind of stay in the national conversation and have a productive conversation about it?
That's tough, because like you're right. You know, most times people comment on things they hear about that are big, and that's one thing that, you know, people can be, you know, I don't want to say misconstrued on, like, because there's things that go on that nobody hears about through education, and who's there speaking up on those things? And that's what the question I feel like people are asking, and that's a really good question. And I think that has to do with our media, and that we portray things. There's certain things that are put on the forefront of our media, you know, and those are the things that people see, those are the things that people hear about, and those are the things we're initially told to care about. You know, so it's hard, especially if you haven't heard or you haven't researched any of the things that go on that doesn't exist. But, you know, continuing, to be honest, I really don't know like how to change that. I just know that is in place, and I know that I try to do my best to, but I don't know how to answer to that. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Hi, Jaylen. My name is David. I'm an undergraduate at Northeastern, and you just talked about the media briefly, but I want to get your thoughts specifically on social media. What do you think about the power and influence of it, and do you see it as much or as great of a platform as being an athlete is?
Yeah, I think social media is probably, if not the biggest platform, or one of them for sure. And you've seen people use it. You have the opportunity to galvanize within seconds. Like, I can tell somebody I'm being at Harvard, and look how many people will show up, you know? So, like, the power of social media is, like, back in the day when people wanted to galvanize, you know, they had to get on the phone, they had to run around, they had to go knock on people's doors. Like, it's a lot different. Like, so the power of social media is for sure prevalent, and I plan to use it as my advantage, and people have. So I think social media is super important and is on the forefront of change.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mustafa Abdurrahim. I wrote over here from the Woodrow Wilson Academy. We're a new ed school. There you go. We're a new ed school, and we're partnered with MIT. And so I'm throwing that out there too. We should be next in line. We're here to revolutionize education, but
in all honesty, I did want to say two things. I wanted to say I watch you guys play, and I see you shut down LeBron. You don't have to be that humble. Yes. So congrats, you know what I mean? We're second place, and I watch you, and like I know you got the skills, and I'm just curious, which side of the ball do you think is most cerebral, the offense or the defense?
That's a good question. I think that's a really good question because naturally both are very instinctive, like basketball and porn. Like that's why some of the times like that's some of my limitations. I think too much, and basketball is like you're not supposed to think at all. But then at the same time, it's certain, like when you study film, you prepare yourself, you see certain patterns and scenarios come out on both sides of the ball. So that's a really good question. If I had to choose, I would say defense. Just because, you know, like studying the game, I mean, that's what the Celtics asked me to do, so I'm biased. They asked me to be a defender. So when I'm studying the game and watching the game, like I'm seeing other people's patterns, I'm seeing how they want to play, and we're trying to take that away. On offense, you know, we're just trying to be free, expressive, and just put ourselves in the best spots. But defensively, you know, it's almost like we're playing chess. We're trying to stop somebody, you know, we're trying to devise a plan to stop their plan. You know, I think that takes a little more effort.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Young man.
And I would like to touch on what you said about youth should be getting their degrees first between trying to play basketball. And I know when you said the NBA, people usually think about LeBron James, but he didn't go to college. So do you think he will be more of a influence to youth than you that went to college and was in graduate classes?
I wouldn't say that. I hear what you're saying though, but you look at some of the most influential people in the world, some of them didn't go to college, so I don't think going to college is necessarily the same thing like of, you know, someone who can affect change. So, you know, as long as you find, you know, something that you're passionate about and something that you love to do, I support that. And, you know, if you have influence, you have influence. If you don't, you don't. I don't think there's a lot of misconceptions about college and about, you know, the financial security of going to college and things like that. And in reality, a lot of people end up more in debt than when they went in. And, you know, so like so LeBron James didn't go to college, but he has the most influence than anybody right now. And whether he did or didn't, you know, he's still LeBron. So, you know, every time he opens his mouth, every time he says something, you can see how everybody feels and how everybody's affected. That's your favorite player?
No.
Nah.
Thank you.
I mean, you still think he should go to college, right?
Yeah, you should still. I'm sure your parents want you to go to college. Right. Yeah, my bad.
Go ahead.
How's it going, Jaylen? I'm Nas, a freshman football player here at Harvard. And as a student athlete yourself at one of the top universities, what were just some of the things you did to really separate yourself from the rest of the crowd in both the classroom and on the court?
Time management. I think that was, when I was in college, that was the biggest thing for me. Because like my schedule was so crazy, because not only like, one of my college coaches is here right now, not only was like we had 3-hour practices, which were illegal, but I was also taking a graduate level course. It was like a 3-hour class, and then every day I had to do like writings and reflections and annotations and stuff. Like, so, you know, something had to give. Like I know a lot of people have seen the little pyramid on social media. You have like, what is it? You have social life, school, and academics or something like that. What was it? What's the three? Sleep. Yeah, that's the one thing. Something got to give. And sometimes sleep would be one. You know, sometimes social life would most of the time be the thing that gave. But time management was how I like dealt with everything. You know, sometimes you can't go out and go to the party, or sometimes, you know, you can't be on your phone for 3 hours. You know, just being disciplined. I think that's what helps the most. But everybody has a routine that works for them. Developing a routine is one of the big things when I was in college, you know, because my schedule was,
Thank you. Hi, Jaylen. I'm Josh. I'm one of 4 transatlantic Celtics fans that are here for the last 2 games and for tonight's event. You spoke about what it means to be considered as an intellectual within the NBA. Who were some of the intellectual individuals for you as a young person who you were kind of inspired by and could relate to?
I'll first give one as an athlete. I'll say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which is has he been to Harvard to speak? No.
I don't know.
Oh yes, this past year. Oh, perfect. That's fitting. I met Kareem once, and he's my favorite player of all time. Just a basketball note. You know, he was 7 foot, couldn't shoot any threes. You know, can't really get a rebound and push it up the floor, but he leads the league history in scoring. How? You know, and people like Michael Jordan could hit threes. Michael Jordan could push it up. How does Kareem Abdul-Jabbar lead all history in scoring? And his efficiency, man, he was just super efficient. And that's part of the reason why he's my favorite player, or one of my favorite players. And off the floor, you know, his literacy is the part why I identify. I think he actually has a book titled exactly what you just said, like intellect or athlete, or it's something along those lines. And growing up, that was one of the people that I always connected with.
So I look forward to seeing you at Skyhook.
Nice.
Coming soon.
Hey, Jaylen. I'm a senior in high school. I also play basketball, and I'm going to play college basketball next year. As you addressed previously when you were talking, that you do Habitat for Humanity and you write poetry. I also do both of those things, but I don't talk about it, and none of my friends really know about it. Him in my shell. How did you get out of your shell while you're at college, and what's the transition like?
How I got out of my shell. Man, Berkeley forces you to get out of it. Like the school I went to, like, I'm from Atlanta, so Atlanta is fast-paced. It's cultural, fast-paced, but everybody's competitive and competing. So, you know, it's all about, you know, the portrayal. Like everybody's, like the analogy I give, everybody's Snapchatting, nobody's paying attention to what's going on. And that's what I grew up in, you know. Clothes matter, shoes matter, the car you drive in, your girlfriend, all of that is growing up in the city where, you know, I was raised. When I got to Berkeley, when I got to the school, my college, and college is supposed to be somewhere that you find yourself and you can express yourself and things like that. So when you go to college, I hope that you find the same experiences that I did. Like, no longer was I in that same confinement, in that same space. And I don't speak of it in the negative. It sounds like I am, but I'm super proud of where I'm from. You know, I'm from Atlanta. It shaped me to be where I am today. But when I went to Berkeley, I just saw a whole nother side of things when I got to college. Like, the shoes I wore, nobody cared about. And like people wore pajamas to class, you know. Like, stuff that I was used to, like, was different now. So it got me out of my comfort zone. Like, it made me think, like, do I really care about the shoes I got on? I'm like, nah, not really. Do I really care about, like, how I dress every day? You know, not really. You know, so it depends. Like, not going to class. Like, if I'm going somewhere else, if I had a date or something, it's different. But when you go into class, like, you know, certain things no longer was important. So when you go to college, I hope you find that same experience that I did. Like, when I got there, I just felt more comfortable being myself.
Thank you.
So for our younger friends, there's some real benefits to college.
Hi, Jaylen. Someone else asked the question I was thinking of earlier, so I would like to say that if you look into outreach to the community, that at AMA on Reddit, maybe the NBA or Boston Celtics subreddit would be a great way to do that. And as for an on-the-spot question, what was that?
I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I slowed it down. Someone else kind of touched on the social media earlier. I would like to say that if you're looking for a better way or a different way to outreach to the community, an AMA on Reddit, either the Boston Celtics or NBA, could be a really good way for you. And as for an on-the-spot question, I would like to ask you, I had noticed a couple weeks ago, one of my favorite plays you did, you got a and one on Boogie and then flexed on him. I like that. And then I was there when you posterized Kristaps Porzingis. That was also great. So I was wondering if you're worried about the correlation between you humiliating these all-stars and then them going down, or do you think it has to be 3, really be a trend?
So you said it has to be 3 to be a trend?
I'm asking what you think.
Oh, somebody's coming up next. Yeah.
Great to see you. Thank you.
So on that note, a couple of quick things. The AOCC opening session begins at 7:30 in Elliott Lyman on the 2nd floor, for anyone who's going to that. Jaylen has other commitments this evening, so he's going to be escorted out in a moment. And we'd ask that you remain in your seats while he does that. But for now, please join me in thanking Jaylen for spending time with us.